gonna fall over, but he won't?
Yeah, he's
Okay.
gonna lean all the way backwards, and he has the
Okay.
ability to still pull himself back up. They're a little bit more, they're different about the restriction like that. They kind of feel like they're trapped if they're being held in real tight.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Real soft, gentle pets like that is
Okay.
what he likes the most. But Dash is a year old now, so he turned 1 August 5th was his birthday.
Oh, okay.
And he's a two-toed sloth, although it makes more sense to say two-fingered because it is the front where they have the two, and on the back they actually have 3. So all sloths will have 3 claws on the back, and it's the front feet where they differ. I'm thinking that he may be looking to see where food is at because he keeps looking at your arm like that. Like,
okay.
When he eats off of one side or the other, and that's where we hold the food bowl at. So I think that's what he's kind of
looking for something.
Yeah.
Okay.
You skipped out on breakfast, buddy, so now we come hungry. Let's see here. Guess what you're looking for over here. There we go. Kind of hold it down just a little bit lower, kind of where your arm was at.
Okay.
There we go, yeah.
And then there's just rice and carrots?
It's rice and actually sweet potato.
Okay.
And then there's a really high quality dog food that's been soaked in water and then mixed into it. And so they stay on that. That's where they get their protein from. And they'll stay on that as their bigger portion of their diet until they're about 2. And then we start to transition over and they'll be eating a lot more leafy greens and vegetables and things like that. But that's what the breeder will start them out on when they're babies.
Okay.
And they do really well on that for the first little bit. And he even keeps some of his older sloths on that as well, on that mixture.
Oh, okay.
But he just kind of supplements with other things as they need. And sloths have terrible eyesight, but they have a really good sense of smell. So he can even tell that that's there even if he can't see it or can't tell by looking at it what it is. That's why a lot of times, like when he goes to open his mouth towards one side or the other, because he sees movement, that's what they're most sensitive to is the movement and touch.
Okay.
Because their eyesight is so poor. And that's why all of our touches and everything have to be really light and slow, so that we don't startle them or anything. Because for a sloth,
startle pretty easily.
yeah, they do. They're very easily startled, especially by noises. Like something as simple as just tearing a paper towel down off of the roll is enough to make them jump, and you can feel them tense up on you.
Okay.
But what do you think, bud? Oh, big yawn. Oh.
And you guys have 4 sloths here?
We
That
do.
a baby and 3?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So Flash and Zoe are our 2 oldest ones, and then Dash and Chloe are our 2 younger ones. And Chloe, she's only 5 months old. Looking for your food again?
What's your food?
What do you think, bud? No?
Does he do that a lot? Stick his tongue out? Yeah.
Yeah, that's always been something that has been more specific to him. He's always done that since he was a baby when he first came to us. Always left his tongue sticking out just a little bit like that, and every time he sleeps, he covers himself up with a towel. That's why we have that towel over top of the basket there while he was sleeping.
Cute.
He always covers himself up, and sometimes if I uncover him and I'll slowly start to kind of wake him up and see if he wants to wake up and come see us, he'll sometimes even cover himself back up. He's like, nope, I'd rather just sleep. What do you think, bud? You gonna reach out there?
Where are you going?
They get explorative sometimes, especially if there's anything new around. Like recently, if somebody's holding them while they're sitting in that chair, there's a little cord that's back behind them that's new, that hasn't been there for very long, and he notices that cord every time and will lean and look and try to lick it and see what it is.
Yeah.
They can't really tell what things are by just looking. He's got an itch.
Are you itchy, buddy?
Oh my goodness. Maybe that's why he's been so wiggly.
Just got a scratch.
What are you doing?
Are there fleas here?
Fleas on the sloths?
Well, I mean,
on
in
the,
Tennessee.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Where we're at in Montana, we don't have
Oh,
fleas.
really? Yeah.
But they don't.
Dry.
Yeah, they just stay in here.
Yeah. So is Montana where you're from, or is, would you say North Carolina? Or?
Yeah, we live in Montana.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you're just doing like some vacation?
Yeah, we're
there?
doing a road trip.
Cool.
buddy.
How long's your road trip been?
Just since yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're on day 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
A lot of
in
distance.
Carolina for a couple months, and now, I'm going back.
Yeah.
Going back to Montana.
Yeah.
Hey, buddy.
Where'd
Is
you
it
guys-
okay to pet by his head?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's fine.
Okay.
Where'd you guys hear about us?
I just searched. I'm obsessed with sloths, so
Sloth.
yeah, I just searched like the nearest place where you can actually hold these. Oh my god, so cute.
That yawn is like the cutest / scariest thing. 'Cause you're not
Yeah, it
expecting
is.
the cute little face to have
It's
all
got
those
some
teeth
big
down
teeth
in
in
there.
there.
Yeah, and those teeth will actually get even bigger as they get older. They will continuously
Okay,
grow.
they keep growing?
Mhm. Yep, and it's a self-sharpening system too that they have, so that every time they close their mouth, their teeth will actually rub up against each other to keep them sharp every time.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you were to stumble across the skeleton of a sloth without knowing what animal it was and just see their skeletal remains, you would be thinking like top of the food chain for sure because of how incredibly sharp their teeth are. Their arms are twice as long as their back legs and just as long, if not longer, than the rest of their entire bodies. So you would think that maybe they were using those arms to like swing through the branches like a monkey does, and with those claws that are on the end, maybe slash things out as they're going by.
Yeah.
You'd be thinking some kind of like, an animal that eats a lot of other animals or eats meat.
Yeah.
When in reality, to see what they actually are, and his cute little tongue sticking out like that right now, it's kind of ironic. I think the Lord had a sense of humor when he was making some of the animals that he did. 'Cause
Yeah.
it just kind of makes you rethink some of the dinosaurs, like if they were actually as ferocious as their skeletons make them out to be,
Yeah.
or after you add like skin and hair, if they're just cute little cuddly things.
Mhm.
Now, naturally, sloths are not going to be cuddly, just wanting to sit in
Right,
your lap and hold
yeah.
on to you like this. Dash is an ambassador sloth, which means that he was conditioned starting at like a week old, slowly from the breeder, to get him used to being around people. And so they go through this ambassador protocol.
Okay.
And the parents, the mother, she's been through that protocol as well. So she's comfortable with being around people. So how it starts out is the breeder will just go in there and slowly start touching mom and then transition over to start touching baby.
Okay.
So mom's never stressed because she's been through it before. She is ambassador herself, so
Okay.
she's not stressed at all. Therefore, baby's not stressed because they feed off of each other's energy.
Okay.
Just like they feed off of our energies. That's how beforehand how I was talking about, petting real
Right.
slow and everything. Because if somebody's petting quicker, they start doing the screeches or things like that, he starts to wake up and he's moving around a lot
Okay.
more and reacting a lot more to things. So they feed off of people's energy, and that's why they want to keep it a very low stress interaction, very each time. It's going to be unsure the first few times because that baby's going to be something completely new to
Right.
them. But then over time, as they're slowly worked up to being touched and handled more and more, then it just becomes just part of their day, their daily routine.
Okay.
Because sloths are very routine animals. They like to do the same thing at the same time, in the same way every day, and they
Okay.
really like to stick to that. So that's what the breeder does with them. And
Buddy, you're so cute.
and it works them up to the point where when the mother finally weans the baby of her own choosing, when she's good and ready to, then the baby, instead of like in the rainforest, once they're weaned, the baby is exclusively on its own. It's hanging onto a branch, fending for itself, climbing, eating, all on its own. But in captivity, they make that transition much slower. So after the mother weans the baby, instead of baby just holding onto a branch all by itself, being scared by itself for the first time,
Yeah.
the breeder gives it a little stuffed animal to hold on to,
Okay.
and then they'll transition onto that stuffed animal. So they kind of go from mom being their source of comfort, their security, to then that stuffed animal being their
Okay.
security. And then the breeder will start to hold the whole stuffed animal and slowly start to touch baby more and more and getting them worked up. And it's always the sloth's decision whether or not they want to become an ambassador sloth or not.
Okay.
Because just because a sloth goes through that program does not guarantee they're going to take to it and want to be held by people. They'll
Right.
make that transition instead of, holding onto the stuffed animal and then holding up onto the person like a
Okay.
successful transition would go. The baby would just hold onto the stuffed animal and then not want to be climbing up
Okay.
onto the person. And so they have to meet two requirements before they come to a facility like this where they're held. They have to genuinely enjoy, you can just set it right there, genuinely enjoy human interaction and actively seek out human attention. And if they don't do one or the other of those, they're not held like this, like how Dash is.
Yeah, because that's what I heard. Like a lot of them don't really like
Yeah.
to be held.
No, and the ones that if you were to have a sloth encounter, say down in like Roatan, Honduras, which has been a hot spot for sloth encounters over the past several years, except the past few months. The Conservancy Agency has really started to shut down a lot of those organizations because they're unethical. Holding a wild sloth, they have an entire ecosystem that lives on their back full of moss and algae.
Yep.
And a very specific type of moth that will live only on the back of a wild sloth. He's got an itch or something on the back of his head. I don't know what it is that he can't get to. That's why he keeps turning his head so quick like that. He usually does not make movements that quickly.
Do they make any noise?
They do. When they're babies, they make little calls that would be to their mothers. But it was so cute, and I wish I could have got a video of it this morning because Chloe, our youngest sloth, she's 5 months old. She was in her basket, and as she saw me moving around and fixing other people's breakfast, or the other sloths' breakfast and everything, she was reaching out and she was going, meh, meh. And they make noises like that. They'll either make a meh or an oof. They'll go oof, really high pitched like that. Yeah. And they start to lose it after they get older. Like Zoe, she's almost 2 years old. And she used to do that. Oh, he's found your zipper. She used to do that consistently every time after I would go to put her back into her enclosure. She would always call for me like that. She'd always make that noise and come back towards me. And she still does it. She just still opens her mouth and will come back towards me, but nothing really comes out anymore. They do start to lose that vocalization.
Hold him.
Yeah.
We switch?
Yeah, we're back about at halftime. You guys want to swap out now? Okay. So he'll transition and then I'll transition and move on to him. There we go. And I'm going to have you guys swap out chairs here for me.
Okay.
So he'll just open up his back legs and kind of wrap around your waist. He'll put one hand kind of under his booty just to support him. And then remember with the other hand, we'll just do real nice and slow pets. And I don't know if he's got something back here or what his itch was, but. All right. Here we go, bud. I'm sorry, step on your toe there. And when I do his encounters, I always have to sit over here on the side because if I stand back there and
He'll try to
move
grab
around,
onto
yeah,
you,
he
huh?
constantly will lean back and be looking at me the whole time. He sees the movement of your arm. That's what he's looking at right now. Oh, but yeah, move your arm out, back away.
Yeah.
As they explore a lot with their mouths too. They're a lot like toddlers, especially when they're younger. Zoe, she's just now growing out of it, and she's 2 years old. But until that point, they really will explore a lot with their mouths. Of course, they do have teeth, so we try to discourage that because we don't want any accidental bites.
Yeah. Will he get any bigger, or is they get full grown?
Yeah.
Oh, that they do.
No, the two-toed sloths, they can get to be up to like 20 pounds full grown.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Now
he's
Zoe,
still
she's pretty much plateaued off. She's 2 years old, almost 2, and she's about 15 pounds. So
growing. Okay.
it varies, but usually around 15 to 20.
Okay.
How about bathing?
They really don't have to do much for them. Sloths
Right.
don't have any natural scent glands or musk glands to them, so they pretty much smell like their environment does. They're not like an animal, like a, llama or a sheep or a goat that we've got out there. They're all on the ground. They'll lay down on the ground, roll in the dirt, and kind of dust bathe themselves. So they're pretty dirty. The sloths really aren't that dirty. They're probably the cleanest animal that we have on the entire farm. Now they get a bad rap for being stinky or smelly because in the wild they have all this moss and algae growing on them, as well as those moths. And where do moths like to hang out?
Yeah.
Poop piles. And so people are thinking that that's why they hang out on them, when in reality those moths have a symbiotic relationship with the sloths. They both benefit from one another, and we'll get into more details of that in a minute. But the sloths really don't, they'll go down, lay their eggs in the sloth's dung pile, but the sloth doesn't really have any excrements like that up on them themselves. So no, they're probably about the cleanest animal that we have. They just smell like their environment does, and so in the wild they just kind of smell like the rainforest, that kind of earthy dirt smell.
Okay.
But yeah, so the sloth, actually the way that they will digest their food is using a bacterial process.
Okay.
And that's really specific to them. For people, we use an enzymatic process and we're born with those enzymes, but the sloths are not born with the bacteria that they require to digest their food, and so they have to get it from somewhere. The first little bit that they'll get will actually come from the mothers. Around day 3 is when they first start to be interested in solid food, so they'll lick mom in the corners of her mouth while she's eating and kind of take some bites of food out of her mouth. and kind of swap spit back and forth.
Okay.
And the bacteria that mom has in her gut is also in her saliva.
Okay.
So that's transferred over into the baby. And
Okay.
baby gets just a little bit of mom's bacteria colony to then start to develop their own.
Okay.
But then in the rainforest, as we know, temperatures are always fluctuating out there, even in the rainforest where it's pretty hot and humid for the most part. Depending on the season that it is, overnight it can drop as low as 60 degrees. And since sloths cannot maintain their own core body temperature, if it gets cold outside, their temperature drops and that bacteria is wiped out. But for a wild sloth that has a healthy population of those moths living on their backs, it's not a big deal because those moths produce the same bacteria that they use to digest their food.
Okay.
So in their grooming process, they'll turn around, just kind of lick themselves, eat some of those moths themselves.
Okay.
That's their protein. But the most important part is they'll lick up that bacteria and then they'll be able to digest their food again.
Okay.
Now in captivity, you can see he doesn't have any of that on his back, and he doesn't need any of it. He has the ability to grow it because his little hairs will still have little tiny micro cracks throughout them that can form moss and algae if they're rained on over and over again.
Okay.
He just doesn't need it because he's not trying to be camouflaged from any other animals. You know, he's in
Right.
an enclosure all by
Okay.
himself. Doesn't
So
have
they'll
anything
kind of
trying
lick
to eat him.
themselves like a cat, kind of to clean themselves.
Kind
or groom
of,
themselves?
yeah. Kind
Okay.
of like a cat. Not to the extent excessively like cats
Right,
do, but yeah, they do to a certain extent like that. And then they don't need any of those moths in captivity because we always keep them warm. It's always 80 degrees in here. We never let it get below that because if it got below that and the bacteria was wiped out from their guts, we're in trouble because we
Yeah.
don't have any of those moths on their back. And so to own
Okay.
a sloth is really, really sensitive, and you always have to be on top of your game because
Okay.
if the power went out and the backup generator didn't kick on,
Yeah.
and it got super cold in their enclosures, we'd be done for. So that's why
And it
owning
would
a
probably
sloth-
happen pretty quickly, huh?
Exactly.
They can kind of turn.
Well, what would happen is, you know, there's a series of different things that could happen. If all of their bacteria was wiped out and they didn't have any of it left in their gut,
Mhm.
they would pass from starvation in approximately 2.5 weeks. Even with a full belly of food,
Wow.
they just couldn't digest any of it
Okay.
without that bacteria. Now, if they kept a little bit of the bacteria, there's different efforts that you can try to get that bacteria colony back up. But regardless, they're going to have a difficult time digesting their food the rest of their lives, and it's probably going to negatively impact their lifespan as well. It's really gross, but you can actually do what's called a fecal transplant,
Mhm.
where you take the feces of a healthy sloth. They'll shed out a certain portion of that bacteria in their waste every time they go. You can transplant that orally into the sloth that doesn't have as much bacteria.
Is
in
that
it.
Chloe in there?
That's Chloe. Yeah, she's
Can we just take a peek at her
she's
before we
woken
go?
up. Yeah, we will when we
Okay,
get done.
yeah.
Yeah, she's starting to
Little
wake up
fingers.
here. Yeah.
I've seen her on videos because I follow you guys on Facebook.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like, is she a two-toed? Looks like her.
She is a two-toed, but remember how I said it makes more sense to say two-fingered because it's
Okay.
it's the front where they have the two, and on the back
Okay.
they have three.
Okay.
So all sloths will have three on the back feet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it can be kind of confusing because they can contort themselves to where their back leg will be all the way up here and it looks like it's a front leg and you can't really tell.
Okay.
So there was when we first we got sent a video of her as she was growing, and I watched it and I was like, wait, is she a three-toed? Because the way it looked just like it was a front claw that was three-toed. It was must have been her back leg
Oh,
that was
really?
just all the way
Okay.
around.
Are
But she
they
was-
related? The
They're
sloths?
not. No, they came from the same facility. Dash, Zoe, and Chloe, all
Okay.
three came from the same breeder. But they are completely unrelated. So that tells you a lot about his facility. He has a lot of sloths, and he
Okay.
specializes in his ambassador sloths. But
Okay.
he has an even bigger program for sloths that are more like Flash. I'm sure you've probably seen him some.
Yeah.
Flash is comfortable with being around people, not so much being held. He's never been held and will never be held unless he's the
Okay.
one to climb onto us.
Okay.
So that's a much more natural, natural
Like
way of
sloth
raising a
behavior.
sloth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if you were to go out into the rainforest and try to have an encounter like this with a wild sloth, it would be very, very different than this. It would be essentially the difference between holding a house cat that's got to sit in your lap and purr like Dash,
Yeah.
and a feral cat that's going to be trying to claw your eyeballs out in the
Okay.
process of getting away from you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and that's why usually when I tell people that, sometimes people will say, well, my sister did a sloth encounter and so, and that sloth was the nicest thing ever. It was just holding on to her. It didn't do hardly anything. And I'm like, well, unfortunately, that's because most of the time people that will do sloth encounters have gotten off a cruise ship. And that sloth has already been through hundreds of people doing a 30-second encounter. And it has
Yeah.